today we are once again joined by Donnie Keel of Ultracamp, who will share with us more results of the summer camp employment study, the results of which will give us important insight into hiring, training, and retaining staff. We just couldn't fit it all in one episode.
Remember what sparked your passion for camp? Ultracamp knows it's about the people, not the paperwork. That's why they built a platform to simplify your camp management. Learn more at ultracampmanagement.com/campcode. Camp leaders, win back your time to what matters most, your campers. Bolin's comprehensive accounting, back office solutions, and tech-enabled team free up your staff to focus on your mission. Visit bolinhq.com, that's BOWLINEHQ.com, to learn more and book a free 2-hour financial diagnostic.
Welcome to Camp Code, a podcast brought to you by Go Camp Pro. For us in the world of summer camp, there's nothing more important than well-researched, well-planned, well-thought-out, and well-prepared leadership training. It's at the crux of all we do. It's how we deliver a safe, exciting, kind, supportive, growth-filled experience for our campers and their families. And it's how we have our staff return year after year. It's how we make the biggest impact on the world around us. Join us today as we delve into the world of staff training, the good, the hard, and everything in between. We're all in this together. Welcome to a very special episode with a very special guest. So today we are once again graced with a visit from Donnie Keel of Ultracamp, camp management software. And we're going to be discussing more of the findings of their summer camp employment study and talking about what they may mean for us going forward. But before we dive into it, let's just take a moment to introduce ourselves. So Gabrielle, could you lead us off, please?
Yeah. Hey, Camp Coders. My name is Gabs, and I'm one of the camp directors of Camp Waro. Camp Waro is an all-girls camp, and we focus on creating a positive environment for gender minorities, and my pronouns are she, her, elle.
Thank you, Gab. And Donnie, welcome back.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me back. My name is Donnie Keel. I use the pronoun he, him, and I head up digital media and learning engagements here at Ultracamp in Southwest Michigan. So it's getting cold this time of year for us.
Well, you're talking to someone from Ontario and Quebec, so we understand cold.
You guys get it. You guys understand.
Especially Gab. And I'm Beth Allison. I'm a former camp director, executive director, and now I'm a camp consultant. I am co-owner of Camp Hacker and Go Camp Pro, and my pronouns are she and her. And as always, my big passion is intentional leadership training. So welcome, Donnie. We are so thrilled to have you back. When we finished the last podcast with you and we were no longer recording, but we were all still chatting, we realized how much more there is to talk about. So thanks for joining us again today to continue sharing the important information and insights that are gleaned from the study. Before we really get into all of this, could you very briefly, in case folks haven't listened to the last episode, share with us why you decided to do this particular study and how it came to be? So just real briefly, because I know we went into more of it last time.
For sure. In brief, it was when I first joined the team here at Ultracamp, going to conferences and talking to administrative staff or camp directors and just hearing these stories that stood out to me as like outrageous of the kinds of ways that they were having to compensate for a lack of staff, and kind of how surprised they were by that they had really kind of been focusing on the return of their camper base, and were surprised to discover that it was their staff base that were having a hard time returning. And it was just kind of, maybe myself, I came out of higher ed. So to me, it kind of felt intuitive to go back to that world that I was pretty familiar with and still had connections in, and engage with college students in a new way. I was familiar with their year-round or maybe their school year habits, and I was less familiar with how they approach summer and what they thought about for the summer. So for me, that was a natural place to start engaging with the conversation about how is it that you are thinking about summer and what is it that you're looking for. And for the admins, asking them, what is it you're looking for? And, where do you guys think the sticking points are in this conversation?
Right. And a little later on, we're going to dive into how those either come together or don't, those answers. Okay. So I'd like to start first with the part of the survey that talks about what people are studying. I thought that was really interesting. So in order of the highest to lowest percentages, this is what your participants are studying in school. So number 1 is healthcare. Number 2 is business. 3 is sciences. 4, social science, so social work, psychology, sociology. Then engineering, then arts and design, then music, and then education, which I thought would be up there like 1 or 2. I swear half my staff became teachers. So I was really surprised with that. And then we saw computer science and the humanities. So is there anything that you would do specifically with that information when you're looking for staff?
Initially, yeah, that stood out to me too in terms of, and this is, we approach students maybe not necessarily through the lens first of, are you currently working or have you worked at camp? It was really just like, who are you? And in general, what are your attitudes towards summer, no matter who you are? So I think what's kind of interesting is in who responded, like who is inclined to respond to that, that you would kind of think that people in education would be more interested in responding to a study, especially if it's connected to something that is in line with their field. But we were kind of surprised by just like the responses themselves really kind of covered the board across the board. I don't really know what necessarily, if I could make meaning out of like the top, or that engineering is up there, or just maybe that this is who was inclined to be thinking about summer when we were putting it out there, which as it turned out, we didn't know it then, but we know it now. We were inside that window when a lot of students are thinking about summertime. If I were to posit any kind of guess, I would say that the ones towards the top maybe are in fields that are a little more conscientious about what comes next, or they're in fields that maybe kind of think in more concrete terms like that of like step by step. That would, I think, be more of a guess, or more of like this is what I would tend, having spent time in that world and seeing the students that are going through these different tracks. But I don't know how much meaning I could make by those rankings, except for these are the students who chose to respond from these different groups across several campuses. That was in the aggregate across several campuses.
And one of the things that I took from looking at those numbers was simply that because they were the ones that chose to answer, and when you ask questions about how many of them had been to summer camp, it was a high number that had been to summer camp, but is that we as directors shouldn't be limiting our recruiting to areas of colleges where we think people will want to work with children for the summer. That we should be looking at all kinds of people, because if they're interested in thinking about summer, if they're interested in being part of a study that's talking about their summer plans and summer camp, then there are possibilities there. But I think a lot of people kind of go to education or maybe some healthcare stuff, and they don't necessarily advertise or talk to people who are in those other programs, and maybe we're missing out.
And I think
how I looked at it.
Yes, and I think that there are some camps that do like mentorship programs with alumni, with our staff. And I think we don't think of the engineers, and we don't think of the computer science alumni, and building those relationships, building those connections. We use our alumni quite often from our CIT program all the way through to our leadership program in connecting staff members that are thinking about different fields and providing that opportunities. But sometimes I think we overlook those fields.
Yeah, it's kind of how I took it. I was like, that's interesting. How many of us sort of put the effort out to people who may be interested in talking about summer camp, but don't look like they're going to go on in their careers to work necessarily with young children. All right, we are going to take a really quick break to hear from our fabulous sponsors, and we'll be right back.
A special offer from Ultracamp for Camp Code listeners. Get ready for next season's staff recruiting with the Camp Experience Wheel, a powerful tool to prevent burnout, boost retention, and make sure your staff feels supported. Download it for free at ultracampmanagement.com/campcode. You need tools that work as hard as you do. Ultracamp's platform is packed with powerful features, keeping your camp running smoothly and efficiently, so you can focus on what truly matters. With Ultracamp's powerful tools, you're in control. Automate tasks like registration and billing, easily manage authorized pickups, create custom payment plans for your camp, generate reports to get key insights, streamline hiring with built-in background checks. Get back to what you love. Ultracamp helps you spend less time on admin tasks and more time creating unforgettable camp experiences. Ready to see if Ultracamp is the perfect fit? Schedule your free, personalized demo at ultracampmanagement.com/campcode. Camp leaders, do you often find yourself bogged down with bookkeeping, accounting, and other back office tasks, taking precious time away from what matters most, your campers? Imagine a solution that frees up your staff to focus on creating impactful and memorable experiences for your campers. That's where Bolin comes in. Bolin offers comprehensive accounting back office solutions designed specifically for camps. Our tech-enabled team handles everything from payroll and bookkeeping to financial reporting, compliance, expense management, spend control, and more, allowing your staff to passionately pursue your number one purpose. With Bolin, you can streamline your camp's financial operations, reduce stress, and ensure your team is free to make a lasting impact in campers' lives. It's time to win back your time and work with a financial partner that truly understands camps. Whether you're a for-profit, not-for-profit, overnight, or day camp, Bolin has a solution for you. Visit bolinhq.com, that's BOWLINEHQ.com, to learn more and book a free 2-hour financial diagnostic. The report is yours whether you sign up or not. Let Bolin take care of your accounting needs so you can focus on what truly matters, your campers.
All right. What I'd like to do, Donnie, is move our focus specifically to hiring. So your study shows that your participants, almost half actually, are very intentional about their approach to finding summer placements. But a considerable number, not far off the first number, are those who have sort of that more relaxed approach and keeping options open without overcommitting. So how can we, as directors, adapt to this kind of thinking when we feel this need to hire all of our staff in the fall and certainly by midwinter for our own sense of calm and peace of mind? Is there anything we sort of need to shift in our way of thinking or our way of approaching hiring?
Certainly there could be. And I think that maybe that biggest disconnect is in something that you notice, timing. Timing is key, that even though it's a majority of share of students would self-identify and say, I'm pretty conscientious about it. I apply by the deadline. The number of students who said, I'm aggressive, like I'm trying to be ahead of the curve, I'm trying to apply early and often, those were relatively few and far in between, below 10%. And it kind of corresponded with the number of students who did an internship. There was, I'm not comfortable saying that's causal, but certainly it was interesting to me that about the same number of students who self-reported, I actually did an internship last summer. And the students who said, I'm really aggressive about my opportunities, they were really close. Certainly there is this large group of students who say, I apply by a deadline. I try to think about summer ahead of time. I don't want to fall behind. And yet by and large, they're not really locking in their plans until, I would say on average on the East Coast anyway of the United States, around spring break time. March is when they begin to conceptualize summer exists in January and February, and then confirming plans by and large in March and April, which if you're running a camp can be uncomfortable, can be pretty uncomfortable.
Yes.
And then a full third will wait until after the term ends to confirm their plans. And that is, I think it can be really easy to be like, well, we don't want those students. Those are the students who wait. They're lazy. They're not going to be good employees. I don't know that that's actually like a great narrative to put on them. I think that if we were, and when we go back, I'll probably ask a couple questions as to the mindset, but just from being on campus, there's so many different pressures that are competing for students' attention. A lot of students' response to that is, I deal with what's in front of me right now, and that's what I have the time and energy for. And they do handle business in the moment, which also would mean that if what's in front of them is camp, is that they wouldn't necessarily be lazy. There are people who put themselves out there and then they're not great employees. So I don't know that it's necessarily to say, oh, this is a cohort of students that you wouldn't want. The downside is like, when are they actually confirming? It's much later than you would expect. And camps are becoming increasingly familiar with the experience of being ghosted, of hiring somebody who said they're going to come, and then they're a no call, no show, or just the fact that a lot of camps are hiring all the way up until they're running, maybe even after their beginning date. So I think maybe what could be happening here has a little bit to do with how well are you equipping your last season staff to be on their minds, and then talk about the kinds of things that you would have them talk about. By far, directors say the thing that they lean on the most, their most utilized or counted upon recruiting tool, is word of mouth from their former staff from last year's team. So my question might be, what are you equipping that mouth to say about you, and when are you equipping it? Can they be kind of plowing the ground for you, so to speak? If it's just like, oh, I hope they say this to me about us, or I hope they're thinking about us. Maybe I would say this is an opportunity to think about when you first reach out to them. Maybe I would say never stop reaching out to them, that you finish your season out.
Exactly.
Offer them some kind of being able to offer them some kind of value on the way back into the school year, of like, hey, you just finished the season. If you were a counselor, then these competencies are true about you. If you were an activity staff, then you can say these competencies are true about you. Can you translate their experience that they just had into language that either the academic world or the working world will recognize? That is often a big disconnect. And if you can, that's a reason to reach out in August or September to say, hey, as you guys are applying for jobs on campus in your area, don't forget that you've earned these new competencies. And in October and November could be a good time to reach out. It's not that you're constantly inundating these kids, but that you are strategically staying connected with them, to let them know, to keep camp on the brain, and then to also give them key things that they could be talking about. Like, friends, if you guys know of anybody that you think would be great, this is the positions that we have open I'm seeing right now. If you know any that would be great, send them my way. I think a lot of directors are doing that. I think it's the win, that if you can, late in the fall, be seeding opportunity and putting out the kind of values that you have and the kind of things that you're looking for in that populace, then if you it feels uncomfortable to say to start your recruiting in earnest in January, February, that is when most students are thinking about it. Most students are going to struggle they're going to struggle to commit to something in November, December. But I do think also maybe what I would pair with that in terms of really starting your push to recruit in January, February, when they're starting to think about it, if you can decrease the number of barriers in your application process, that is going to help. A lot of times we convince students, you should be here. You should really be here. And here's all the reasons why. And then we put an application in their hand that really asks the question, are you good enough to be here? Prove to me that you are altruistic enough, or that you have the right value system for us. Those things are important. I'm going to say maybe start with interest as a wide funnel. What are you interested in? How could you see yourself involved here? And maybe the rule of thumb is, if you're having applicants write really long paragraphs and you're not reading everything they write, it should probably be a conversation. You ask, oftentimes these applications will be really long and they'll include everything up to and including your t-shirt size. I would say maybe pare down, maybe make your application process multiple steps, and each step should be simpler. And then deploying that in January and February with a simple, low barrier can yield you at least more people to have a conversation with. The last thing I'll say, I've been doing too much talking, but the last thing I'll say is, if you can make a trade on campus, if you can go to campus, even if it's a giveaway, that's the kind of the classic. Hey, if you sign up for an interview, or if you apply, you enter to win a something. That's an easy way to get contact information. But even if it's like, hey, I'm going to come in with a resume tip sheet or a bunch of pre-built resumes, templates that you can use off of something to trade, some resource that a college student will find relevant, and you can get their email address in exchange, recognizing a third of them will not be ready to talk to you until later. if you are doing on-campus visits, still get their email addresses, still get some way to contact them so that when you're coming into that later window, you can reach out and say, I don't know if you have found anything yet. I still have these opportunities for you if you want to have a conversation with me. It's not feasible to make multiple campus visits for most directors. It's also not feasible, I think, for a lot of directors to go back after this school year's ended. There's nobody there. But if you are
They're a
making
bit
campus
busy.
visits, yeah, and they're busy. But if you're keeping track of whatever campus that you're recruiting on, and graduation weekend happens, and that Monday you're right there being like, graduation happened. I don't know what your plans are. If you don't have anything yet, call me. You could scoop up quite a few, I think, good applicants who are ready then to engage with the moment. They just think a little bit differently throughout the school year. So go into your recruiting season with something to trade, whether it's a giveaway that would generate interest or whether it's a resource that could really help them. That can really help. I'd love to give this to you. Just like put your email address in and you'll get a copy of it or you'll be entered to win. You're getting their contact information to reach out later, and that can be a really powerful tool for you.
And I think the idea of doing a much shorter staff initial application is the trend these days. People are seeing the importance of it. But I remember back in the day, I would read these staff applications and our original ones were far too long. I mean, looking back on it now, far too long. But I would often wonder if parents wrote them, because just the way they were written. And now, of course, we have to wonder if EI is going to be writing them. And I think you get a better sense of that person if you can have a in-person conversation, a Zoom call, and make it, more the face-to-face connection as much as possible if you're online, of course. But I think you get to know a person more and they get to know more about you to find out if that's a good fit. So kind of doing it in steps, as you suggested, is a really good idea.
And I think that it's such a different culture depending if it's a new staff member or a returning staff member. Our staff member, we're right now finalizing their hiring conversation. So we're just before the holidays hitting. And so we do priority applications up until the end of October. And then we do their interview process. And we've found that if we have returning staff members go home over the holidays and they haven't had a conversation with us, they get that warm, fuzzy feeling of how lovely it is to be home. And then they're a little bit more nervous in January and February. If we get them before the holidays, they're still close enough to camp that they're part of the now. And so it's building that culture to lock in your returning staff members as early as possible and you can build that. And we truthfully used to do our interviews and applications in February, and we moved it back slowly but surely until now we're in October and we're doing our applications. And I don't want to go earlier than that because they do need a little bit of space. And I also need some space from them too. To make clear decisions. So that's helpful for me. That's just a little insider for me. I think at job fairs, also something really helpful to say is, I'm not here to convince you to work for our organization. I'm here to give you the information that you need to make a good decision. And I think that we're in a culture of getting used to being bombarded with sales and, come join me. And I find it takes the pressure off. I find that there's so much more the approachability is so much easier. And we do it literally, we have a QR code and it goes immediately into our calendars and they book a 20-minute chat with another staff member. And we say, we're here not to convince you, because we're not going to say there's no bugs and and the internet's fantastic. We're going to say the opposite. We want you to have the information to make a good decision. That's what we care about put Camp's name here. We care about you, making the right decision, not for us to fill our roster. And I think leading with your mission obviously is number one, but leading with, we do care about you whether you're with us or not is also extremely important. So, but yeah, I would have been one of those kiddos that was like emerging in March, being like, what should I do in the summer? 100, I was like, live in the now, sign me up. In 7 months, yes.
And I would have been the opposite, but then
I know, that's why we're friends. That's why we're best buddies.
I would want to know September 1st. What are we doing next time?
I would have gotten a call from you being like, okay, it's time to hand it in. We also don't do written, by the way, we don't do written text fill outs for questions. A lot of them are videos where they just upload a video. And that's hard to fake on the AI. Yeah, I'm sure at some point there will be, but we do a quick little video and they just answer these questions very quickly and upload their video. But the first conversation, they don't have to, we just want their name. That's basically it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good way of thinking. What's the minimum amount of information that I need in order to have a conversation there? And that could be a little bit different for everyone, but that's different from, it might feel like it's most efficient to gather everything at once, but you might be sacrificing effectiveness on the altar of efficiency. And then if you start the season still hiring, it maybe even wasn't efficient. So yeah, what's the minimum amount of information that you can get in order to have a good faith conversation or help them make a decision? Because camp isn't for everyone. I was recruiting for a camp in California on a campus in Southern California, and we were out there, had the whole booth and beautiful day, beautiful weather, and had a student come sliding up on a longboard. Our camp is located in Yosemite National Park, and he said, Yosemite, I can't get my swag on in Yosemite. And we said, you're 100% right. Zero swag to be gotten in Yosemite. But that's okay. Like, maybe the last thing I'd say is, if you have that trade set up to make where you're at the very least getting information that you could follow up on, that frees you up to where you aren't having to feel like you're making a sales pitch all the time. What I mean is, if you can move to being more inquiry based to what their current experience is, what is it like being you right now? I think carrying that curiosity into a conversation is really compelling for a student. When somebody's asking them, well, what's it like being a sophomore engineering major? And what are you hoping to do with that? What's the dream? What do you think you'll need to get there? If you engage in a really good faith, inquiry-based conversation that is centered on who they are and what their goals are, eventually, especially if you get their contact information, but eventually before they leave, they'll say, tell me a little bit about, this organization. There's a little bit of obligation there, but that also gives you a lot more to work with in tying the experience that you're offering to their life. That there is a big question that they have when it comes to summertime opportunity. This came up over and over again in the open questions. Will this opportunity enhance my life path? Will it take me further to where I'm trying to go? Or will it be a distraction or diversion from where I'm trying to go? What a lot of directors know is, especially when it comes to different skill sets of leadership and management, it's for sure is going to enhance where you're trying to go. But it's hard to say that in a generic sense. So leading with a bunch of questions about who they are, what they're looking for, what they value, what their plans are, can oftentimes equip you to tie the experience into what they're already trying to do or add clarity to what they're doing. And that can be a really compelling reason of like, okay, this is not a diversion from my life path, but it really is going to enhance where I'm trying to go or get me there quicker, or add something that nothing else could add to me. That can be really effective.
Great. Thank you. I found the parts of the study on perception of summer camp employment as an opportunity for professional growth, which you're talking about, and compelling reasons to work at summer camp really interesting. So 60% of the students believe that working at summer camp is an opportunity for professional growth. Am I reading that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And 47 said it was a guaranteed way to develop and deepen a network of friends, which tied with a clear sense of mission and vision and values. And ranked fourth comes financial compensation. But then the number one reason for not working at camp was poor financial compensation. So kind of have to think about that as directors. Like, I think that's a good key piece of information for us, followed by taking up too much of their summer and having those low energy levels going into the summer at the start of the summer after the end of a school year. And then you look at the recruitment pitch by directors, And the most valued factors were positive experience. That was like almost 92%. So, what can all these different factors teach us about recruitment and hiring? And once we get to the point where we're giving them more of a pitch.
Yeah, there's some interesting clues here that we see that students aren't necessarily drawn to pay only, that there's other things at play, but pay is one of the first barriers that they come to. So with camp, that could look like, this sounds like a great opportunity for someone. You're doing great things. This sounds like it would be great for somebody, but this opportunity is too expensive for me in terms of, opportunity cost. That like, I wish I could come engage, but it doesn't meet my budgetary needs. That's a difficult thing to wrestle with in the time that we live in because everybody's experiencing that. This surprises exactly no one.
No.
I would say that there is an opportunity maybe to expand the conversation because students will oftentimes lean in specifically to wages or like hourly pay. And that was the rule when I was working at camp was like never take your paycheck and divide it by the number of hours that you are awake here. Like it won't be exciting for you. I do think though there's an opportunity for in good faith directors to talk about how camp is compensating a student's time. That there are many value points that go in. I don't mean to say to try to like hide it or certainly there needs to be conversations with the board of directors of what does it mean to remain competitive as an employer here for sure. And if it sounds really difficult, but if you have not raised the price of your camp in years and years and years, it's going to need to happen at some point, specifically maybe to reinvest in your staff and make sure that they are coming back. But I'd also say that there is room to widen the conversation to how are we compensated? What is the value of housing all summer? What is the value of food all summer? What is the value of maybe the place that you're located? Can you attach value points to this to paint the picture of pay is a part of it, but compensation is the larger picture that we're trying to get you to understand. What is your investment here? And what is this place's investment in you? And how are we valuing that? So that's a part of it. Another thing that kind of is happening in the data here is a lot of students, like the lowest value of the summer was being where my friends are, but a really compelling reason to go to camp would be to develop and deepen friendships, which I thought was kind of interesting. I can't really explain that except for it might be a tacit indictment on my school friends, but I can't, I'm not going to drill down on it. I don't want to over-represent that, but I do think a lot of students look at their friends from the year and they are in friendships or relationships that they know aren't good for them. And they have no idea how to change or adjust their friend group. Saw that firsthand many times when we're working with students. So camp does have an opportunity and it has a reputation of high quality individuals. If I can go there and I can make the kind of friends that I think will be good for me, specifically if the mission and vision and values are clear and there's a healthy workplace culture, that also is really huge for students. And when there's not, it stands out. It really stands out. Time commitment is also tricky because most students will have maybe 12 weeks if they're involved in student leadership, could be even less, 10 weeks. And camps will come along and say, give me 8 of those, give me 9 of those, maybe give me 10 of those weeks. And that can be really difficult. So I think that there's also some systematic questions that camps could ask themselves about flexibility. Some camps don't want to cross that bridge. Flexible contracts are not a thing for us. I think if you're in the day camp world, maybe you have a little bit more room here. But even if you're in the kind of sleepaway overnight camp situation, there could be some value in saying, can we turn our summer into 2 halves? Can we, is there any way that we can be flexible here to meet the student needs that are presenting, that are really a barrier of like, man, I'd love to be there. I have this thing. I need to be with my family, or I am in a wedding. To really stop me if you've heard that before. If there ever was a time to think about what it could look like for you to be flexible, I think now is it. And being able to describe that flexibility to the people that you're interviewing. Beth, I don't know if that if that covered it, but if there's I feel like there's one more
think
piece of data
so.
you threw out that I didn't necessarily touch on, but those were the things that stood out to
Yeah.
me.
No. I think you got most of them. I just was, it was interesting that it wasn't pay as the number one thing, but lack of decent pay was, top reason for not being able to go. Not necessarily wanting to go, but being able to go. And then thinking about, I think you touched on it, about the fact that 92% directors talk about the positive experience of camp. So making sure what that looks like, because their number one was professional growth, and positive experience takes up professional growth, but there are other pieces to positive experience, so it's not just about that. So thinking as directors, thinking about what's important to the students and how we can connect best with them when we're telling our story.
Certainly, I think maybe we talked about it last time. Both groups said that positive experience was really important to them.
Yeah.
I think what's interesting is maybe what the difference is in how each group defines a positive experience.
Mhm,
And I think we touched
exactly.
on that last time, that oftentimes students are defining a positive experience as a reduction of cost, stress, anxiety, energy, whatever. And directors are calling it positive experience the activities, the culture of camp, the vibrancy, the growth that you experience at camp. So there also could be a lot of room in those questions. Being inquiry based could also help you focus on where a student is at and asking them, what kind of experience are you looking for? Nobody, maybe a little bit of a flawed question in terms of nobody's necessarily looking for a negative experience, but the
Of
fact that
course.
maybe what I should say is what this showed is most people on both sides prioritize the experience of the thing first. They understand that even if it pays me really well, if it is a trash experience, then it's not worth the pay. There's that cost benefit analysis. And so it could also be a call of describing the experiential benefit. Oftentimes, this would show that students are familiar with, in our desire to be honest with them about the experience, we lead with the difficulty of camp. We'll say it's really hard, but it's worth it. It's a lot of long hours, but you have this really transformative experience. I would flip that. I would say lead with the positive thing and then follow, as you're not trying to gaslight them into believing that it's something that it's not, but they're challenge sensitive. They're challenge first. They're going to place a heavier weight on the scale associated with challenges than they are with benefits. The question is the benefit worth the challenge? I would say in your pitch, emphasize what those experiential benefits are, even as you are honest about it does take energy and effort. Maybe flip the narrative from it's hard, but it's worth it to there's all these incredible things waiting for you, and our system helps you deliver, and we help manage your energy. We help get you to cross the finish line as you have these conversations.
I think I think the it's hard, but it's worth it. I think the but piece and the worth it piece is the part that we need to be gentle with, because I think I don't know what's worth it for this person. And I think you go back to what you were talking about, Donnie, is asking questions, like ask questions, find out what's worth it for this individual. I also do, I am a believer. I do lead with the bugs and the internet and all this first. I do it because I don't want to be ghosted and I don't want staff to leave. And I am looking for a particular type of person that is maybe a little wackadoodle. That's a technical term. And in the sense that they're okay with these type of things. And I think that we do have a lot of employees that will come in and because of a little bit of a shock of what was expected. I think that my goal is to say, hey, I'm somebody you can trust right off the bat, like, and I know this is really hard, especially when you're looking at 100 staff that you need to hire, 200 staff members, or just 5, but your camp has literally 17 staff members and you're missing 5. That's a huge percentage that we get anxious about getting those staff members. But I think that to make yourself stand out, It's saying like, it's not going to be worth it for us if it's not worth it for you. And I just want to hear, what you're interested in. I'm not going to try to sell this on you. And I try to live in the now and not be anxious about all of the staff members I need to hire, simply because I know how much work it is when I lose staff members, how it can cause a negative effect. We had one year we lost 14 staff members, and we're a team of 65, and it was a mixture of outside of camp issues, individual issues with some of the staff members, but there was also a domino effect. I would say about 4 of the 14 left because they got scared of seeing other staff members go. It is petrifying. But there was some of those staff members that year I was nervous, and I sort of went a little bit more on the convincing route, and I saw it. I saw it. So I think it's difficult and it's scary to say, but it's the but piece, I think, that we have to sort of pay attention to and ask them, what are you excited about? What are you looking forward to? Let's see if this is the place for you.
Yeah, that's really smart. With the few minutes we have left, this isn't really a question for you, Donnie. It was just maybe you have some advice or something, but I thought it was really interesting in the part that you sent out to directors and admins that social media and word of mouth were the 2 most highly ranked recruitment process, followed closely by online job posts. And you talked about word of mouth and stuff already, and that the recruitment practice that's currently giving them the best result is word of mouth. And the least effective was job fairs with a whopping 0%, which is interesting. So is there advice there? Should we be changing how we spend our time? Or, because job fairs there's a lot of time involved in those, and travel and all of those kinds of things. Is this generation of staff, I don't know, we're meeting them better online initially or through word of mouth from staff members that we've had in the past? And we should not put so much effort into job fair, or what do you think on that?
This is something that we are coming back around to as we consider redeployment this spring, to figure out like what are the spaces that are most effective. Because we ask that to directors, but we need to ask that of students specifically, like what are the spaces and voices that actually help you make that decision? It's interesting. And I'll reference another researcher, Megan Owen, did a similar study in the same time frame as ours, independent. I hadn't met her until after we had written our report. And we co-presented it at PRJ, not this year, but last year, about our studies, because they were the same length. They had a really similar sample size. And then each of us asked a few questions that kind of gave some information about the other. They were really complementary. And one thing that stands out to me in this area is how she did ask a question about what are the places or factors that go into actually making a decision. Something that we discovered is in our study, directors are saying, man, I feel like I need to be on social media. I feel like I need to be out there. And in her study, I think it was 0 students said that social media helped them make their decision.
Okay.
Now, excuse me.
That is interesting.
That isn't to say, oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. That isn't to say that there's no value in social media. But it also isn't to say that it's necessarily a great recruitment tool. I also want to be clear about the sample, or like who we talk to in this.
Yes.
Is primarily private schools that are represented in this study. And maybe what they are thinking of as a job fair in that world, that's probably what they are. When they go on to campus recruiting, it's usually oftentimes these campuses are making space for specifically camps. And they're not necessarily job fairs where you're having to go in and compete like on a larger campus or on public campuses. I would say this though, that when it comes to like where are the most effective spaces, in Megan's study, the most impactful voices were parent voices. That's difficult of like, how do you access to somebody's parent? Because you might have a student who's really interested and then mom or dad says, no, I need you to get a real job this summer.
Yeah.
Something I would...
They say
yes.
real? No. Dang, we
Stop
know.
me if you've heard this before.
We know.
Well, and also,
Beth and I are
professors
still
not-
explaining what we do in real life too. So.
Absolutely. Professors are also known to say that as well, but really, like, mom or dad have a pretty outsized voice in this. I I think something it's a medium term solution would be to, while you're in season, week by week or session by session, have your staff identify in your camper populace the kinds of traits, characteristics, personalities that they see could be future staff. That also is a chance for you to plant the seed for the camper, but it's a huge chance for you to plant the seed with mom or dad. What mom or dad would not absolutely love to be taken aside, even for 60 seconds on pickup day, and say, hey, you ought to know, our, you know, your daughter's counselor was so impressed with her this week, and she thinks that she would be great to come here and be a counselor to future generations. And here's the kind of things that we value. Here's the kind of benefits. But I just thought you should know, because it also, you're helping to remove the barrier in that voice that they have in their lives. How to reach a parent of students, and maybe it comes along with doing a little bit in Project Real Job. ACA Project Real Job has done a great job of this, of translating language. You heard me say that earlier. That can also be really big if you're going to go to job fairs, doing the work to say, this is the thing that your field is going to look for or quantify as a competency. And this is the thing that we do to develop that competency in you. And there's camp language that we use to that, but helping cross the bridge. If you've been a counselor, if you've been an activity instructor, if you've been anywhere in camp, maybe on our any level of camp up to and including our CADCO team or our admin team, these are the kind of workplace competencies that you can expect. And inviting them, show this to mom or dad, like show this to make a good faith decision here. Show them the kinds of things that we're trying to develop in you to get you to where you're trying to go, to kind of head that off. But I think that's on the shorter term end, doing some of that translation work, having something to put in their hand that helps them take this home. Ask your mom or dad about this. And if you have any more questions, if they have any questions for me, have them write or call. And I think the medium or long-term game is planting that seed in camper and on pickup day. If you could be planting that seed with mom or dad, 10, 12, 15 campers a week, you really do reduce that barrier of that really key voice in their life who says, oh, this place has been developing you, and it will continue to develop you as you develop other people. That's authentic, or that's real. I think that could go a long ways in getting into new areas of these new voices that make a difference. When we go back, maybe the last thing I'll say is when we go back to redeploy, we are going to spend more time talking with students about when it comes to be decision time, like whose influence. Do you just do what you want to do and listen to your heart? Is it mom or dad that have like the biggest voice? Is it your professor? I'm sure it's an aggregate, but asking them, who is it that's speaking into you that really, when they put their thumb on the scale, things tilt? And that could also inform some recruiting practices of how to reach those populaces that end up helping make decisions.
Great way to end that.
Love it.
So Gab, I think it's time, even though we could go on for hours, I think about
Definitely.
this. Time for your famous recap, please.
Recap. Okay, so what are the mindsets of most of the staff that are applying to us? The mindset is here and now. Am I close to the summer? Then I'm thinking about the summer. If I'm not close to the summer, I'm not thinking about the summer. So try to get them at the end of the summer as quickly as possible. And let's be, flexible for those that might be applying a little bit later. They're just a live in the now type of staff member, and they could probably be great within your organization. We just have to be a little flexible with them. Second of all, let's think about fields. Hey, it's not just teachers that are applying and healthcare providers are applying for our organization. A big plethora of people are. So widen your search when you're looking for staff members, and returning staff members, build a culture to get them locked in, hopefully more in fall and early winter. That's going to be wonderful for you, because guess what? They can help you get new staff member. Why? Because a lot of new staff members, it's word of mouth. And at Waro, I just send them an image with a list of jobs that are available. And I say, hey, I reach out to them personally and I say, here, share this with a friend. I know you're a good choice. You have good judgment. I believe in you, and we need these people. Let me know who they are, and I'll get in touch with them. Now, once they do get in touch with you, you want to make sure that the barriers are low, 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 low. QR codes are wonderful. Just book them for a 20-minute conversation and, be genuine with them. We want you to work at our camp if it's the best fit. If it's not, well, let's help you find another place. But, this is why we're awesome and lead with, of course, your mission statement. A lot of the time, camp directors love to talk about their camp and they're so excited about talking about their camp. But let's ask them questions. That's going to be really, really helpful. It's going to help them feel seen and you'll be building trust. And lastly, parent talk. Listen, everybody, we know who drives the ship with a lot of our staff members. We have to do a little bit of legwork to translate for parents why choosing our camp is great. We already know that our camp is great for their kids and that the lessons that they learn goes far beyond the boundaries of our organizations. Help translate to those future engineers, future coders, future teachers, future stay-at-home parents why camp is going to be great for those kiddos. And that's our recap for today.
Thanks, Gab. And we would love for you to get involved in our podcast. Let us know any topics you'd like us to discuss, any guests you recommend, and any great leadership training tips. We would love to hear from you. And if you found our podcast to be useful, we would love it if you would leave us a rating. Your feedback helps us keep the show going. And we found out just the other day that we're in 43 countries around the world right now. So hello to all of you. Before we wrap up, if we could just share our personal contact info or whatever you're comfortable sharing, Donnie, and if you could let us know also where the link would be to the study for folks who might like to see all of it in all its glory.
Absolutely. So if you want to email me, please feel free to do so at Donnie, that's DONNIE, at ultracamp.com. That's ULTRA.com. If you want to check out the study, you can find that at ultracamp.com/ I should have had this on deck.
That's okay. We'll also
I said it in
put
the last
show
one.
notes.
I just don't. Yes,
That's
put it in the
okay.
show notes. You can get it online. It is up there, ready to download. Oh, I can't believe that.
We'll put it in show notes. Sorry about that. I shouldn't have sideswiped you on that. That's okay. We'll put it in the show notes, folks, if you want to go see it. There's some really interesting information there, especially if you love data. And yeah, where can they find you?
They can get in touch with me at info@waro.com, and they can check out where I work at waro.com, OUAREAU.com.
Thanks, Gab. You can email me directly at beth@gocamp.pro or look us up at gocamp.pro. And you can find me on Instagram at #topaz_Faye, F-A-E. Our final segment on each podcast is a best practice for leadership training. And again, we would love to hear some of your memorable moments or most effective tips. And you can tell us what they are using the #CampCode. But this week's best practice comes to us from Gabrielle.
Well, speaking about doing a little bit of parent encouragement translating, one of the things that we do for our staff is a seminar at the end of the summer. Actually, it's a little bit more in the end of September, where we host a writing your resume or curriculum, your CV, sorry, for future jobs. So we work on with our staff members that want to sign up on how to write a resume, how to write a cover letter. We do this with our counselors in training. But as they stay with us, their skills develop and their wants, needs change as well. And so we sit down and work with them. We have a 2-hour long session, and it's pop in, but we give them some base information. We give them templates, and we help them translate the good work that they did that summer into something that people from in the outside world, outside of camping, could understand. We promote this when families come and drop off our staff members, but their kiddos. We promote this date to those families as just something that we do post camp. And this is something that our families are really, impressed by, even though it's actually not that much effort on our end. And it gets them excited to come back to camp for the next year. So this is something I recommend. And it also teaches staff members how to talk about camp in a critical and manner and not just a camp terminology way. So hosting a little workshop afterwards, encouraging your staff to join. It's beneficial for them, but our parents also enjoy it.
Thanks, Gab. Camp Code is part of the Go Camp Pro podcast network, and you can check out all our other podcasts at gocamp.pro/podcasts. Thank you again for joining us on this journey as we work to give our campers, our staff, our families, and camps the best experiences possible. And thank you so much again, Donnie, for joining us and sharing your findings and your wisdom and for all that you do for the industry. We are so very grateful. Happy New Year to all of you. We know that 2025 is going to be our best camp season ever. Thanks for the listening, friends.